All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Hakwadash, the honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, honors and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushing his word in truth and sincerity. All right, this is the brother Tawab Rakah from GMS Los Angeles / Inland Empire, coming back with another video in the spirit. And once again, Thawadi Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai for opening my eyes to this truth. Allow me to wake up another day and putting the spirit on me to do another lesson in hopes that I'll find the hopeful elect. Okay, so in this video, what I want to go into is a self-examination. Okay, self-examination is very, very important. And it's a thing that we have to do daily. Okay, because as we always speak about, okay, this flesh is no good. This flesh is evil. Okay, this flesh is contrary, wants to do things contrary to what the spirit wants, you know, and you know, being that we examine ourselves, we have to be honest with what our weaknesses are, you know, and we have to acknowledge that, and you know, that's what prayer is for, you know, praying to the Lord, you know, in some cases fasting, okay, and you know, this is how we combat, you know, certain temptations, lusts, okay, because we're going to deal with those things being in this flesh. Okay, there's never going to be a time where, you know, we don't no longer have to examine ourselves. We no longer have to deal with temptations. As long as we're living in this flesh, we're always going to be faced with those feelings or desires or whatnot, you know, and this is part of the battle. Okay, this is why this thing is referred to as a fight. Okay, because who's the fight mainly against? Ourselves, our flesh. Okay, yes, you know, we got scoffers, you know, these other Esau and these other nations, and 2/3 of Israel, you know, they're on the opposition as well, as far as right now, you know, talking about 2/3 of our people, you know, but mainly is ourselves, you know. That's what the battle is mainly involved with ourselves, you know, and like I said, being honest about it, you know. And the Lord is also showing us, you know, to, you know, be humble, because we all have flaws. We all have things that we fall short on, you know, and that's why this thing is not about exalting yourself, you know, because a lot of individuals, you know, not even just in the truth, but in the world, period. A lot of individuals, especially in this day and age with all these different platforms on the internet, a lot of people, you know, exalt themselves, man. You know, they get a lot of people, they get a large amount of following, and things just because they have a large amount of following, that means that they can't be reproached, they can't be corrected. Okay, that, you know, they basically start feeling themselves, you know, and we see it in the truth and we see it in the world. Okay, and that's the mindset we're not to have, you know. Okay, we always got to constantly, you know, remember that, hey man, our righteousness is as filthy rags. None of us is perfect, you know, and you know, the fact that we even know what we know, you know, is a blessing in itself, you know, because the majority of our people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who are the Israelites, okay, the majority of our people are totally gone, you know, totally bugged out, you know, and that could have easily been one of us, you know. So, Slacky, for the long opening, I just wanted to get that out the way. So yes, that's pretty much what I'm gonna go into in this quick lesson, man. Just quick to the point. You know, we always gotta remember to examine ourselves. brothers, always. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this prayer by King David, prayer about, preserving his integrity, praying to the Lord that the Lord keep that, that integrity, keeping that righteous spirit upon him, just like similar to Psalms 51, when he prayed to the Lord not to take his Holy Spirit from off of him, because the Lord can do that, man. 1 minute, someone can be on fire for this thing, and the next minute the Lord can completely just take the spirit off that person to the point that person is all the way back in the world, even worse than what they were before they came into the truth. Okay, so I'm gonna get right into it. This is Psalms chapter 26, verse 1. All right, it says, a Psalm of David. It says, judge me, O Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashmi Avashai, for I have walked in my integrity. I have trusted also in the Lord. Therefore, I shall not slide. You see that? And as long as we, do the things that are pleasing to the Lord, okay, walking after the scriptures, walking after the voice of the Lord. This is because the scriptures are the voice of the Lord. This is the Lord's words. Okay, we won't slide back into that old man, that old way of doing things. Okay, before we came into this truth, which is sin. Okay, which is death. Okay, this is life. Okay, because we're walking after how the Lord intended us to be, to the best of our ability. Like I said, we're not perfect, but this is the mindset. We're striving for that perfection, by doing what the Lord said to do. All right, it says, examine me, O Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashmi Avashai, and prove me. Try my reins and my heart. You see that? So that's what the Lord does with us, every day. The Lord is putting us through trials, testing us, seeing where our motives are, seeing where our intentions are. Okay. And like I said, we're in this flesh. Sometimes, brother, we make mistakes, and the Lord knows, but what the Lord is looking at, he's looking at your intentions though. If you're a malicious individual, you're just a malicious soul. You just out here just being a demon. Okay, you out here just being willingly being evil. The Lord can see that as well, man. And the Lord is going to deal with individuals that had that kind of the spirit, man. Just out here just being malicious. It's one thing to, make a mistake, but it's another thing when you're doing things out of maliciousness, man. And that's what we're not supposed to be doing, It says, for thy loving kindness is before mine eyes, and I have walked in thy truth. I have not sat with vain persons, neither will I go in with dissemblers. You see that? Because, when we come into this truth, we're basically, we're holy as far as being separate. We're separate. That's what the word holy means separate. We're separate from these people in the world, because majority of these people in the world, they got all sorts of evil spirits upon them. Okay, even though if you may meet certain individuals in the world, they may be cool or whatever, but you don't know what that person does behind the scenes. You don't know what kind of man or woman that individual is when you're not around them. When they're not in the eyes of men. Okay. So, we like I said, when we go out in this world, we're not, because of course we have to interact with people. You got a job, you work, you got to be around people, but we're not congregating with people. Okay. We're not going to other people that don't believe in what we believe in. We're not going to their homes. Okay. We're not going to their churches. Okay. Or wherever they believe in, we believe in. No, we separate ourselves from these individuals, okay, when it comes to those situations, okay. So that's a big part of maintaining integrity, okay, because a lot of people, you got a lot of jakes out here call themselves leaving the Hebrew Israelite movement. Well, how can you leave the Hebrew Israelite movement? That's a nationality. That's who you are, but a lot of our people are ashamed, okay. So they cast away where, which they didn't have no integrity, because if they had integrity, they would have, continued. But that goes to show you a lot of people don't understand what they're involved in. A lot of people don't have integrity when it comes to this truth, because a lot of people, they want to be, you can't be in the truth and fit in the world at the same time, man. You won't have to make a choice. You're going to have to pick a side. You're either going to choose the world or you're going to choose the truth. Okay, ain't no in between. Okay, you can't be on the fence when it comes with this word and this world, man. Okay, and the Lord is gonna cause situations that happen to where you're gonna have to make that choice, man. And the Lord can get very dramatic about certain things too. So, it'll behoove those of us that's really serious about this thing to really take this thing serious, man. Okay. All right, it says, I have hated the congregation of evildoers and will not sit with the wicked. And a lot of these Israelite camps, these individuals that's in these different Israelite camps, that's what they're doing, man. Okay, they go to these different platforms. Okay, they go through these different podcasts, whatever you want to call them. Okay, and they sit among these evildoers, man. Okay, these wicked ass niggas, and or heathens, they go on these different platforms, they do these debates, but then when you really see them sit among these individuals, they sit among these individuals, and it seems like, they're cool with these individuals, there's no kind of like, opposing what these individuals are speaking about. They come as if they're at peace with these individuals. And see, this is why we don't, we always say that we don't deal with these other camps, because that's confusion, man. How you gonna call yourself an Israelite, a Hebrew Israelite? You're supposed to believe in what the scriptures say, but then you congregating with people that don't believe in what you believe in. That's confusion, man. Okay, but that goes to show you that's a lack of integrity. Those individuals are clearly not examining themselves. Okay. All right, it says, I have hated the congregation of evildoers and will not sit with the wicked. I will wash mine hands in innocency. So will I compass thine altar, O Lord, that I may publish with the voice of thanksgiving and tell of all thy wondrous works. And see, that's what the true men of the Lord are going to do. Okay, publish. When we go out there on the highways and byways, that's in the public, that we're publishing this word. And how will it look? We out here teaching the scriptures, telling our people to repent. But then we turn around and do the same shit these jakes in the world are doing. That's gonna be hypocrisy, man. That's being a hypocrite. And like I said, we're not perfect, but we have a standard. Okay, we have something to live by. We have something to hold us accountable for when we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, and that's what this word is, to keep us in check, keep our flesh in check. Okay, because we still, have weakness in the flesh. So that's why the scriptures are here. That's why the Lord set up a brotherhood, brothers, to sharpen each other, That's what these things are set up for, And also, you know, the Lord gave us a conscience, man. He gave all of us a conscience to know, you know, within yourself. We all know within ourselves when we're slipping, okay, when we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, when we know we could be doing better, okay. We all have that conscience that the Lord has given us, man. You know, and that's right there. That alone, when you're able to really be honest with yourself and talk to yourself in your mind and know when you're falling, and so you give yourself those spiritual pep talks. That's right there alone is self-examination, man. You know, you examining yourself right there, you know, and that's what we constantly have to do. You know, we can't get in that complacent spirit and take our foot off the gas because, you know, you may be a brother that do videos diligently. That don't necessarily mean that you could be of the elect. Okay, because you could be a brother that does videos every single day, but if you're not moving right, if you're not really genuine, sincere, and and have integrity about this thing, then all that is all being done in vain. Okay, because you got people out here that do the work of the Lord out of strife and vainglory, man. You know, so not saying that a brother that does videos all the time, that the Lord doesn't care about that. I mean, the brothers that are diligent, as sincere in Yahweh Shemi Shah, that's a beautiful thing, man. And the scriptures speak about being on fire, right? But then we gotta also remember too, we gotta be, the reason that we're doing these videos is what's the main purpose? Is to edify, okay? Not just to be doing videos just to, have a rep or try to make a name, so-called name for yourself, which a lot of guys that call themselves Israelites, that's what their whole thing is. It's all about, getting praises from men. It's all about being put on a pedestal. It's all about being that guy, And as we've seen throughout, the past few years, the Lord has been exposing these guys that, that seek that position, man, that want to be that guy. They get put under that the Lord put their ass underneath that microscope, man, and shine a light on them, So, like I said, man, we always, all of us, we gotta constantly always examine ourselves and make sure that, we're walking in this thing with a pure heart. Our intentions are pure. Okay. It says, that I may publish with the voice of thanksgiving and tell of all thy wondrous works. Lord, I have loved the habitation of thy house, in the place where thine honor dwelleth. Gather not my soul with sinners, nor my life with bloody men. Like we always bring out in Psalms 91, this is a secret habitation. This truth, okay, that we're in, okay. This is the house. This is the habitation of the Lord. It's truth, okay, and this is what separates us. This is what keeps us from the sinners, okay? Because what is sin? Sin is transgression of the law, okay? Jake out here in the world, what is Jake doing? Jake is murdering one another, okay? Jake is out here committing adultery, okay? Jake is out here robbing from one another, okay? Coveting what their neighbor has, okay? Jake out here bearing false witness on one another. Okay, Jake out here committing idolatry, worshiping all these different idols. Okay, eating all sorts of abominations. Okay, putting tattoos on their body for the dead, you know, so on and so forth, you know. But this measuring stick, which is the scriptures, this is what keeps us in line. This is supposed to be the the manual. This is our manual. Okay, just like when you have a car, every car has a manual, okay, and tells you every function of what that car, how, whenever the issue arises, all the different the symbols that you can look on the manual. It tells you what those symbols mean, and tells you why exactly that, like your dashboard. You have a check engine light. You have all these different signs on your dashboard to let you know the shape of your vehicle. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing with this word, these scriptures. It's like a schematic, okay? So this is how we know when we're off track, and when we need to examine ourselves, okay? That's what the scriptures is going to do for us. All right, it says, in whose hands is mischief, talking about the wicked individuals. All right, it says, and their right hand is full of bribes, but as for me, I will walk in my integrity. Right, and you got guys that's getting that bag, and they perverting the gospel. That's another sign of not having integrity. That's a major sign of not having integrity, man. Taking a bag, okay? And then that's what we see with all our people in general. Anybody, Jake out here, that's trying to make it in Hollywood, trying to be famous, You see all these podcasts coming out of the blue, That's all Jake is concerned with. Jake is all concerned about, chasing after these riches, so-called riches, and it's all deceit. Because Jake don't understand that all their all them hours and time that they're chasing after this imaginary bag is all in vain. And this society is crumbling, man. This place is unraveling. Even these Edomites, okay? And I ain't talking about no, bum ass Edomites. I'm talking about Edomites that make a pretty good living for themselves in this society. Even they're starting to see that all this shit is vain. All the time that they go into all these universities, these different trade schools or whatnot, all this shit was in vain. In the short term, they was able to get a home, have, live pretty decent, live in a nice, quiet neighborhood, okay? Got all these, super big ass grocery outlets, shit that Jake don't have, because when you go to the hood, Jake ain't got no fucking major grocery stores, man. Jake got the cheap, the lowest of the low, you know what I'm saying? Jake got liquor stores, laundry mats, you know what I'm saying? And, just the worst of the worst, the fast food places, But even these, like I said, these Edomites, they're starting to realize that all this shit is smoke and mirrors, all bullshit, man. But like I said, getting back to the lesson, you got dudes that have taken the bag and perverted the gospel. Okay? It says, but as for me, I will walk in mine integrity, redeem me, and be merciful unto me. My foot standeth in an even place. In the congregations will I bless the Lord Yahweh Shemi Awashai. You see that? So this is the mindset we got to have. We got to walk with integrity, man. Okay? Don't forget, that when we, the moment we first came into this thing, why, how we felt and how genuine we truly believed in this thing. Okay, we we gotta pray to the Lord that we don't lose that. All right, got one more and I'm gonna wrap it up. And we all know this. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5. It says, examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves, know ye not your own selves how that Yahweh Shai Hamashiach is in you, except ye be reprobates. You see that? So this is very, very important for all of us to always remember to examine ourselves, man. Okay? Because like I said, this flesh is no good, man. Okay? And like I said, the examination never stops. All right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. So with that, I'm going to give all glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Hakodash, the honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, honors and salutations to the hopeful elect, pushes word, truth, sincerity. Shalom.